Sometimes I wonder if some people are born to be invisible. Not because they choose to hide, but because the world never truly looks their way. For as long as I can remember, that invisible boy was me. I grew up in the quiet little town of Meadowbrook, surrounded by endless fields and skies so blue they almost looked painted. To anyone passing through, it was a place of peace. But for me, home was the one corner of that beautiful town that never felt calm. The Thompson house was always loud, not with laughter, but with demands and judgments. My father, Robert Thompson, ran the most successful hardware store in town. Everyone admired him, strong, confident, the kind of man who shook your hand like it meant something. But to me, he was the voice of disappointment. If I brought home an A from school, he'd glare and say, "That's not cutting it, Alex." My mother, Sophia, cared about appearances more than affection. Her smile could charm an entire room, but it never reached me. She wanted a picture-perfect family, not a quiet, uncertain son who preferred books over boasting. "Sit properly, Alex," she'd snap. "Don't look like a disappointment." I had two siblings, Isabella, my older sister, and Ethan, my younger brother. Isabella was everything I wasn't: sharp, confident, always saying the right thing. She knew exactly how to earn our parents' praise. Ethan, the youngest, could do no wrong. Every mistake he made was brushed off with laughter. And me. I was the shadow in the middle, neither the pride nor the joy, just the silence between their stories. I still remember my high school graduation. Everyone else had families cheering, cameras flashing. I stood there with my diploma, surrounded by strangers' applause. My parents were at the store, Isabella was away, and Ethan was at a party. I told myself it didn't hurt. But that night, staring at the empty seats in the audience, I realized how heavy loneliness could feel. Years later, I moved to Capital City. I found work as a freelance audiobook narrator. My little apartment wasn't much, just a desk, a microphone, and shelves filled with stories that weren't mine. Every day I lent my voice to other people's tales, heroes, dreamers, and adventurers, while my own life stayed small and quiet. I liked it that way. Or at least, I told myself I did. The only person who ever truly saw me was my grandmother, Margaret. She lived on a small farm, just outside Meadowbrook. Her silver hair was always tied in a neat bun, and her hands, though wrinkled, carried the warmth of every story she ever told. As a child, I'd sit on her porch while the wheat fields swayed like waves, and she'd spin stories of brave souls, lost kings, and second chances. "Your stories are magic, Grandma," I'd tell her. She'd smile and tap my chest gently. "The real magic's in your heart, Alex. You just have to listen to it." When I turned 14, my family forgot my birthday. They went to Ethan's soccer game instead. Grandma baked me a small apple pie, lit a candle, and sang softly. She held my hand as I tried not to cry. That moment has stayed with me my entire life, the quiet love of someone who didn't need a reason to care. Even after I moved to the city, I called her every week. She'd always ask, "How are you really, Alex?" And I'd say, "I'm managing." But truthfully, I wasn't. I was lonely. I wanted my family to care, just once, not out of duty, but from the heart. One ordinary Tuesday, after finishing a voice recording, I stopped by a cafe to edit my work. A coworker texted me, "Buy a lottery ticket, Alex. Who knows? Maybe your luck will turn." I laughed. Luck and I had never been friends. Still, when I passed a corner store, something nudged me. I spent $2 on a ticket and forgot about it. 3 days later, I was eating takeout when the TV blared the winning numbers. My hands trembled as I checked. Every number matched. $85 million. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My life, the invisible, ordinary life I'd been living, had just changed, but instead of joy, fear crept in. My father always said, money exposes greed. And I knew he was right. If they found out, my family wouldn't see me, they'd only see dollar signs. So I decided to keep it a secret. I hired a discreet lawyer, a kind woman named Emily Hargrove. Together we set up the Horizon Trust, an anonymous name under which I claimed the prize. After taxes, I had $52 million. I invested quietly, bought nothing extravagant, and told no one. Yet the wealth only made me feel more alone. Every day, I asked myself, would they care about me if I had nothing? I already knew the answer, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. One gray afternoon, I drove back to Meadowbrook. My heart pounded as I stood at my parents' door. The same faded blue siding, the same oak tree shading the porch. It was as if time had stood still. My mother opened the door, eyebrows raised. You should have called first. Inside, the house smelled of Polish and stale air. My father sat watching television, barely looking up. After a few awkward exchanges, I told them my lie. I've been diagnosed with a blood disorder, I said quietly. I need $4,000 for treatment. I can't afford it. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my father sighed. You're 28, Alex. Handle it yourself. We're already stretched thin with Ethan's situation. My mother added sharply, you always expect others to fix your problems. We can't help you. I nodded, pretending it didn't hurt, and walked out before they could see my eyes. I tried Isabella next. She sounded worried, for a moment. Then she said, I'd help, but with the baby and the house renovations, I can't right now. I'm sure you'll figure something out. I didn't bother calling Ethan. I knew what his answer would be. Finally, I called Grandma. I could hear the concern in her voice before I even finished explaining. Oh, my dear Alex, she said, her voice trembling. I'll send you what I have. It's not much, but it'll help. A few minutes later, I heard the rustling of drawers and the clink of an old tin box. She came back on the line. I can give you $2,800. It's all my savings, but you take it, all right? Tears filled my eyes. I couldn't speak. That night, she took the bus to my city with a basket of garden vegetables and a tin of cookies. She handed me an envelope of worn bills, her hands shaking. Take it, she said softly. You're my world, Alex. I'd give everything if it meant you'd be all right. I hugged her tightly, unable to hold back the tears. I told her the truth, and instead of anger, she just smiled through her own. You've got a good heart, she said. Just don't let this world make it hard. A week later, I bought a small bungalow on the edge of Capital City, a quiet place with a sunny porch and a garden full of lavender. I asked her to move in with me. When she arrived, her eyes shone with tears. It's beautiful, she whispered. For the first time, my home felt alive, with laughter, stories, and peace. Together, we planted flowers, cooked simple meals, and watched the sunsets fade into gold. That's when I decided to do something meaningful with the fortune I'd hidden. I started the Horizon Hope Foundation, anonymously. Scholarships for kids in Meadowbrook. Aid for struggling elders. A small library for the town. Every act of kindness healed something inside me. Life changed quietly after Grandma moved in with me. The house that once echoed with silence was now filled with soft humming, the clinking of teacups, and the comforting rustle of her footsteps. Every morning, she'd make herbal tea that smelled of mint and rosemary, and together we'd sit on the porch, watching the sunlight stretch across the meadow. I still worked from my little studio, narrating stories for people I'd never meet. But now, when I stepped out of that soundproof booth, there was someone waiting for me, someone who listened, who cared. Grandma would always smile and ask, "What story did you bring to life today, Alex?" And I'd tell her about the heroes, the dreamers, and the people who found hope even in darkness. Sometimes, I realized I was one of them. Through the Horizon Hope Foundation, I began to see small miracles take root. Scholarships helped Meadowbrook's young students chase their dreams. An old community center was rebuilt, filled with books, laughter, and second chances. And all of it was done anonymously. I didn't need my name written on a wall, the joy of giving was enough, but while peace settled into my days, my nights were haunted by old memories. I often dreamed of my family, not with anger, but with ache. I still wondered if they ever thought of me. Did they miss me? Did they regret how easily they had turned away? One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, my phone rang. It was Isabella. Her voice trembled as she said, "Alex, it's Dad. He's had a stroke. The doctors say it's serious." For a moment, I couldn't move. No matter what had passed between us, he was still my father. Without hesitation, I told her I'd be there. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and worry. I found my mother sitting stiffly in a chair, eyes red, but pride still intact. Isabella paced near the door, whispering to a nurse. Ethan sat in the corner, face buried in his hands. When my mother saw me, she hesitated. "You came," she said quietly. I nodded. There was nothing else to say. The doctor explained that surgery could save him, but it would cost over $30,000. My family didn't have that kind of money. They whispered among themselves, frustration and fear filling the sterile air. I watched from the hallway, unseen, like I had been my whole life. That night, I called my lawyer. "I want to cover the surgery," I said. But anonymously. Through Horizon Hope. She didn't ask questions. By morning, the hospital had the payment. Days passed before my father opened his eyes. When he did, he was weak but stable. The doctor mentioned an anonymous donor had covered everything. My mother's brows furrowed. "Anonymous," she repeated. "Who would do such a thing for us?" I didn't answer. I stayed quiet, sitting beside my father's bed, listening to the soft hum of machines. I wasn't there for thanks. I was there because it was the right thing to do. When Grandma found out, she smiled knowingly. "You did what your heart told you," she said. And I told Sophia. She should know what kind of son she raised. I sighed. "Grandma," she patted my hand gently. "Sometimes, the truth needs light to heal." A week later, I received a call from my mother. Her tone was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Alex," she said, "would like to visit you. All of us." That Saturday, I stood by the doorway of my bungalow, heart pounding. Grandma helped me set the table with her favorite dishes, vegetable stew, warm bread, and her famous apple pie. When the car pulled up, I saw them step out slowly, my father, frail and leaning on a cane, my mother, composed but uneasy, Isabella holding her little girl, and Ethan, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes downcast. "Welcome," I said quietly. The air inside was thick with unspoken words. We ate mostly in silence, until my father cleared his throat. "Alex," he began, voice shaky, "I owe you an apology. I wasn't a good father to you. I pushed you away when all you wanted was to be seen. You didn't deserve that. My mother's eyes glistened. And I'm sorry too. I cared too much about what others thought and forgot what really mattered, my family. Isabella reached across the table. You were always the kind one, Alex. I should have stood by you more. Even Ethan, usually defiant, spoke quietly. I messed up a lot. You didn't. I should have looked up to you. I didn't realize. I was crying until Grandma squeezed my hand. The years of pain, rejection, and longing all poured out in that moment. I took a deep breath and said, I forgive you. All of you. Let's not look back anymore. Let's just start again. For the first time, the silence in our family felt peaceful. My father's lips trembled into a faint smile. My mother reached out and held my hand, something she hadn't done since I was a child. After dinner, we sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. My niece played with Grandma's old garden tools, giggling. My father looked at the horizon and whispered, "It's beautiful out here." "Yes," I said softly. "It finally is." That night, after they left, Grandma and I sat under the stars. She looked at me with proud eyes. "You did it, Alex. You found peace." "I just wanted them to understand," I said. "They will," she replied. "Because love has a way of coming back, maybe late, but it always returns." Her words stayed with me. Over the following months, things slowly changed. My parents called often, not out of obligation, but to ask how I was. Isabella visited with her daughter. Ethan began volunteering at the community center Horizon Hope had built. We were far from perfect, but for the first time, we were trying. Grandma spent her days tending to the little garden, teaching neighborhood kids how to plant seeds and tell stories. She said stories were like seeds. You plant them with kindness, and one day, they bloom into something beautiful. I often watched her from my studio window, her silver hair glowing in the afternoon sun, and I felt a quiet sense of gratitude. My life hadn't turned out the way I once imagined, but maybe that was the point. Pain had shaped me, but love had saved me. Years later, Horizon Hope grew far beyond what I expected. Scholarships, clinics, homes rebuilt for those who had lost everything. And yet, no donation, no award, ever meant more to me than Grandma's words, "You listen to your heart." Because in the end, that's what changed everything.